everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Sports Fix podcast. I'm Travis Hughes, here by myself this time. Tyler's going to be out of town this weekend, so it'll be just me for this show. But doesn't matter. We're going to have a lot of fun anyway. We're going to enjoy our time, and we're going to have a lot of fun. So, quickly recapping last week, Tyler and I both predicted Kansas City and LA to advance to the Super Bowl, and we got the LA one right. We were pretty good on that one. However, we did not get the Kansas City New England game correct, which is fine. Also, want to mention a comment from last week. Eric commented on the last podcast and said that he expected Spencer Ware to have a breakout game in the New England-Kansas City game. Unfortunately, I'd have to say that Spencer Ware did not have the probably the greatest game last week. But I think that's a solid prediction, honestly. I think that was a good guess. It just didn't work out for Spencer Ware last week. I'm looking up his stats right now, and didn't really do much. Had a 21-yard pass catch, but outside of that, didn't do too great. But thanks for commenting, Eric, and feel free, anyone who's listening, to comment and voice your opinions on anything we're talking about, or bring up something that you wish we would talk about. Because that's something we would really like to do, is to hear what you guys want to hear from the Sports Fix. So speaking of last week's NFL championship games, let's start. There's a lot of controversy surrounding these conference championships. Both games went into overtime, both very good, very close games. And so let's start with LA and New Orleans. This one's got a ton of controversy around it because for those who don't know, in the fourth quarter, with under 2 minutes to go in the game, New Orleans threw a pass to their running back Tommy Lee. Let's see, it's Tommy Lee Jones, right? Was his name? And I'll make sure I got his name right, because that would be really embarrassing if I screwed that one up. Okay, he's not on this roster. Where in the world is he? Tommy Lee Lewis, not Jones. Tommy Lee Lewis was streaking to the end zone. He had a first down for sure, possibly a touchdown if he catches the ball. And then the Rams secondary defensive back not only interfered with him or made contact with him, but practically, hard tackled him before the ball got there, and there was a no call. And I will admit, in live action, when I saw it, I think it was bang bang. When I saw it live, after looking at the replay, he definitely hit him before the ball got there, and it should have been a pass interference penalty. And the controversy was that New Orleans should have been able to advance, because if they complete there, they most likely win the game, because LA probably wouldn't have gotten the ball back, and the Saints would have kicked a field goal or scored a touchdown to win the game. Instead, they had to settle for a field goal in the next play, and the Rams are able to march down the field and kick a field goal, send it to overtime, and then proceeded to win the game. The controversy here is, what should the NFL have done in that situation? The commissioner has power to reverse the calling on the field. So he could have given the Saints the victory. I don't think that's the right call. I feel like you still have to make the field goal. You still have to. There's still so much that can happen in that final minute and a half of the game. Something else that people have suggested is the commissioner can also call for can replay the game from that point. They can assess the pass interference call, to the Saints. The Saints would move into first, get their first down, and they can play the game from there. Um, that one actually seemed like an okay option to me. I didn't think they'd actually do it, but it seemed like something that was uh, a solid decision. Um, and a lot of people have suggested finding refs or doing something along those lines, and they ultimately though the nothing happened, and the Super Bowl will be LA versus New England. Um, for me, I've always been a big fan of penalizing referees if they get a big call wrong in a game. Referees are going to miss calls. It's just what's going to happen. It's speed of the game. You can't have instant replay for every penalty. I mean, you imagine trying to do an instant replay of every pass interference call in an NFL game. The game would extend another half hour due to reviews. You can't do that. But I am in favor of suspending referees or fining referees for not doing their job right, for missing these crucial calls. I mean, you're calling the NFC Championship game. You should be one of the best ref teams in the NFL, but they missed this crucial call. And so I'm all for penalizing referees. I think this should apply to every sport. This is gonna force referees, if they did this, to get their calls right. Because if they miss the call, it's gonna be a big problem. They will face a penalty for those missed calls. As far as I understand, there aren't any negative repercussions for referees looking to. There aren't any repercussions for referees who make bad calls in a game. I don't think that's a thing that exists, and I'm all for doing that as a option to keep refs honest, keep refs from throwing games like that, or if they do throw games, they get penalized for it. But on the same hand, I think when Tyler and I were talking last week, I mentioned this, but one play cannot lose a game for a team. New Orleans came out on fire that last week, and I mean they dropped off. And I think I echo what I said last week, is they stopped playing through Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara, it might be the best athlete in the NFL. The guy is one of the fastest, shiftiest, best hands, open field runner. He's got the full package that anyone would want for a scat back running back in the NFL. I mean, he's better than Darren Sproles ever was in his prime, and he's that type of player. And they stopped playing through him, and I give credit to the Rams in that they were able to shut Kamara down, but they game planned and they changed their strategy to shut down Kamara. But when you are when you're the Saints, and every time the Kamara touches the ball, he's getting 20 yard receiving or 20-yard catches. You got to play through him more. It's just how it goes. He still played a good game. Breeze threw a couple interceptions, which I feel really bad for Drew, because this is probably he's on his way to where Peyton Manning probably was. I wouldn't shock me if next year is reminiscent of Peyton Manning's final year, because this might have been his last chance to make the Super Bowl in the league. I think that I think they stopped playing through their best players, though, and I really think that affected that team and how that offense produced. The defense played well enough to win. The defense held LA to 23 points. That's plenty of points. Like, that's you can win a lot of games only allowing 23 points, especially with 26 points, but I'm not counting overtime. That offense just didn't produce when it needed to, and Breeze came up with a couple major interceptions that really changed the momentum of the game. And I also want to say karma for the Saints. They ran that fake punt against Philadelphia 2 weeks ago, and that totally changed the momentum for the game. Well, LA turned around, did the same exact thing for them, and it was the same type situation, same field position, and they faked the punt, and it really shifted the momentum of the game to where the Rams were able to come back and win that game. So congratulations to the LA Rams. They've that organization has just been incredible to see them turn around from St. Louis, where they fired Jeff Fisher, and they got Jared Goff in the draft. Sean McVay, he's younger than a lot of players in the NFL, and he's done a great job coaching that team to the Super Bowl. I think they well deserve it. On to New England and Kansas City. There was also a bit of a controversy in this game. A lot of frustrated New England haters as well, that were really upset with how that game was going. New England, it looked like New England had the perfect game plan, and Kansas City took way too long to try to shut it down. When you let New England run all over you and destroy you in the first half of a football game, it's so hard to basically score all your points in the second half against that team and win. You have to come up with that fire. And that team, Kansas City, was good enough to beat New England. I'm not going to say that they weren't. This is actually where the controversy comes in for this game. Is New England received the kickoff in overtime off of a coin flip and drove the ball down the field, scored a touchdown, game over. Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes never touched the football in the second half. This has been a point of controversy, I think, for a while now. This a few years ago when there were some issues in the playoffs in a conference championship game where you could just drive the ball down the field, kick a field goal, and win the game before the new rules. That was a major issue, and they changed that, where if you kick a field goal on your first drive, the other team gets a possession. I think that's fair. However, I'm not a giant fan of the current rules where you got two prolific offensive teams that just march down the field all over on each other, and there's just whoever gets the ball first wins the game. Because I guarantee if Kansas City gets the ball the way they were playing in that second half, they were absolutely on fire, being able to score as much as they did in the fourth quarter to put that game into overtime. They would have gone down the field and scored and won the game. I'm confident that would have happened. And so the new overtime rules these overtime rules, I think, need another looking at. They need to look at changing the possible overtime structure. I personally, I'm a big fan of the college game, and I love college overtime. I think it is a fantastic, fun thing. Each team gets a possession, and true, it could go on for a very long time. And I think that the NFL, they've got TV issues that they have to maintain. College doesn't worry about them as much, but NFL for TV that's a lot of rules that they have is so that the games last just about 3 hours, and so they can move on to the next game. And so you wouldn't want a straight college overtime rule where you could go to 100 overtimes in theory, or more. Infinite overtimes in theory. So you could maybe have a rule where you have to go for 2 if you score a touchdown. That's a really good option. I feel like you could even make that a rule where each team gets the ball. Well, yeah, each team gets the ball and they have to go for 2 if they score a touchdown. I think that's totally fair. And maybe not at the 25-yard line like colleges. Make it a bit more interesting. Put it the 35 or the 30. Make it a bit more difficult for that team to score the touchdown. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Both about the refs in the NFC Championship game and the overtime rules in the AFC Championship game. What do you guys think should be a good rule change or option for these that could come out of these games? What do you guys think the NFL should do with overtime? What do you guys think the NFL should do with the referees and the blown call at the end of the game? And I going back to touch on that, I get it. there's human error in refereeing. It happens. I'm not saying referees need to be perfect. I'm not saying they should get penalized for missing a call here or there, but big plays that change the game that you get wrong, you should receive a penalty for that. If you call a pass interference call that is non-existent, you should get penalized for that. If you don't call pass interference when it was clearly pass interference, you should that's a problem. You should get punished for that. So yeah, just tell me what you guys think in the comments. What do you guys think should happen? Do you think any changes should be made, or do you think that everything's fine the way it is? Do you think it's just part of the game and people need to accept that that's just what it is? Let us know, and we can discuss your comments possibly in the next episode of the Sports Fix. Okay, I just want to once again to give a shout out to my UT Vols basketball team, number 1 in the country for the second time ever. Had a couple kind of rough games the past couple games, but overall doing really well. Got a great team there. I think that this is a team that could really, if they play up to their potential, could be in the Final Four, win the national championship type caliber team. They're projected by Andy Katz as the number 1 seed, as one of the number 1 seeds in the tournament. And I guess there's a long way to go to that point in the season. We're not even halfway through conference games, but this is a team that I've grown up watching, and I remember the last time we were number 1 and how exciting that was, and this is, as a UT fan, I started following them in 2006, I think was my first year that I legitimately watched them. And so if you guys don't know much about UT, the football program basically took a nosedive in 2008. And we've kind of had a couple good years since then, but overall we've not been the same team or the same program that we were 10, 15 years ago, going to SEC championship games, competing with Florida and Georgia for the top spot in the SEC East. As far as football goes, and basketball, most of my life we've been average. A couple of Bruce Pearl years we were really good, and now with Rick Barnes we're number 1 in the country, and this is. The team that he's got's amazing, and they play West Virginia today. I think that's a team they definitely are gonna win or gonna beat. They're gonna win that game probably by 12, 15 points, something like that. Now, if we see the effort that they've put in against Vanderbilt and Alabama, that's a team that could compete with them. West Virginia beat Kansas, last week. So this is a team that can play with the big boys, but overall is not. They're 9-10. They're not the best team in the country by any stretch of the imagination. And so Tennessee's been playing very lazily on the defensive end and settling for some questionable jump shots on the offensive end, and it's led to a lot of these problems. And that's fine when your shots are falling. You're scoring 100 points a game. I mean, Tennessee had has had a couple 100-point games so far this season. But sometimes your shot just isn't falling, and the past couple games their shot just hasn't been falling as well, especially for Admiral Schofield, one of their best players. And so I get it, shooting slumps happen, but those shooting slumps wouldn't matter as much if they played with the same intensity on the defensive end as they have for a lot of the season. So I'll be looking for that today when they play West Virginia. Something to note, Adam Vinatieri, kicker for the Indianapolis Colts, returns for his 24th season. He announced that this week that he's going to be coming back for another season. And if you're not familiar with the NFL too much, 24 seasons, while he is a kicker, so he's not getting beat up all the time and hit, 24 seasons is unheard of in the NFL. I think this might be the longest anyone's ever played in the NFL. He's 46 years old. Kicking 50-yard field goals at at 46, like he's one of the best. I mean, he is the best. He's NFL's all-time leading scorer. He's got like 2,500 points or something something close to that. He's absolutely incredible, and so I'm excited to see him come back, and hopefully he doesn't outplay his body. He doesn't try to do too much, but he is awesome to see a man like that playing the NFL who can do it for this long and keep his body in good enough shape to be able to play this long. Although Tom Brady probably will give him a run for his money with how healthy he keeps himself and how well he's been playing. Final topic for today. I want to talk. This is going to go a little bit off of sports. It's related to sports, but it's going to go a little bit off sports. At the last week or 2 weeks ago, there was a fan who attended the Portland Trail Blazers basketball game who had a case of the measles, and that's not a common disease in America whatsoever right now. And he had not received the vaccinations needed to prevent this kind of disease, and because of it, I think around 20 people have been diagnosed with measles in the area. And it can be traced back to this guy who attended the Portland Trail Blazers basketball game. And I just want to, this is a personal note. This is from Travis Hughes. This is not, this is just me speaking from my heart. Is that anyone who is crazy enough to not get vaccinated, you need to go out there and get vaccinated. The measles has not been seen in the country for who knows how long. People have not needed to be treated for measles. I mean, on a large scale for decades, and we have this miracle of modern medicine, and people refuse to get their children vaccinated, to get vaccinated themselves. And I just want to say how ridiculous that is. You are putting not only your child at risk if you don't vaccinate them, but you're putting other people around you at risk. We live in a culture that is vaccination by population for a lot of people. There are a lot of people who don't have the immune system that can handle vaccines, and so they rely on everyone else around them getting vaccines to avoid catching these sicknesses, these illnesses. And when we don't vaccinate, these diseases that we never heard of before, polio, measles, or that have not come around for decades, like polio, measles, and I mean, there's tons of other diseases that are out there that we don't get anymore. And because you won't vaccinate your kids, you put so much of the nation at risk. And I know that one study said that autism, vaccines induce autism. Well, I can tell you right now that the man who put that together was it has been proven that he's a fraud. He's not a real. He had a conflict of interest that changed how that study went, and I just want to say that anyone who believes that, you are doing so much harm to your children, to the country by not doing that. And for those who subscribe to Andrew Wakefield's theory, his study, I promise you that's not. Basically, if you don't know the story, he had a conflict of interest because he was paid by people who had cases against various medicinal companies, that he was paid off by them to come up with this claim that vaccines cause autism and other other disorders. So please take the time to get your kids vaccinated, to get yourself vaccinated if you haven't been, because this is something that's not. This can be a very dangerous thing to the citizens of our country, to your kids. So that ends my rant. But it might be a little it's a little weird not having Tyler here with me for this podcast, but he'll be back. He should be back next week, where we'll discuss the Super Bowl, our predictions for it, and also answer any questions that you guys have in the comments or comment section, or comment on anything that you guys have to say, because we want you guys to be involved with this podcast. We're also planning, in a few weeks, we'll probably be hosting a Facebook Live edition, so a live version of the podcast that we'll obviously record and redo, and post onto YouTube. But we'll have a live version that you guys can call or text into if you're interested at all, and allow you guys to interact with us. So this will probably be a bit after the Super Bowl. I can't tell you what week we're gonna do it, but we'll let you guys know. We'll keep a lookout for a Facebook Live from us, as we'll do this show live one morning. But as I'm gonna wrap this up, and thank you guys for tuning in to listening to this week of the podcast, the Sports Fix podcast. And like I said before, talk to us if you got any questions or comments for us, and we'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.